So I guess, the morning routine is just the same as what you'd expect. 6:30, wake up, exercise, personal study. There was often, we would do our companionship study on the square, on Temple Square, like halfway through the day, depending on if we needed to be there at 9 o'clock or 10, because the mission actually, like the Temple Square opens at 9, and so there'd be certain zones assigned to be there at 9 o'clock. So sometimes you go at 9, sometimes you go at 10, just depending on what your assignments were. And then you would plan with your companion the night before where you wanted to go as you walked around the square, like specific maybe areas that you wanted to focus on. Like in the tabernacle, we're going to talk about prophets. Like that's an easy example of kind of like what you'd have prepared, like scriptures and different things. So if you met someone and you were talking to them and you kind of felt like stuck of, I don't know what to say, you had a scripture in mind of like what you're going to talk about. And so there was no like assigned area within Temple Square. Like you didn't have to stay in the South Visitor Center. You didn't have to stay in the North. You could kind of walk around wherever you wanted to. I guess the only places where you would be assigned is if you were in certain zones, you'd be assigned the Beehive House. So you'd spend like half the day doing the tours through the Beehive House or Welfare Square or the Humanitarian Center. Those are areas that you kind of needed to stay when you were assigned. But otherwise, you could just walk around the square and get to know people and talk to people. And it was really neat just being able to go up to someone, start talking to them, and just have the Spirit guide you completely, because you don't know who they are. You're not even in their house. Like you have to play off of clues of like what they're wearing, if it's, if they're with a family or if they're alone, or, what kind of feedback they give you, if they're a member or they're not a member. I was really nervous going into the mission. I was like, how am I going to know if they're a member or not? Like, what if I invite them to learn about the gospel and they're not? But that was pretty easy to tell. I feel like they're, if they refer to you as, oh, hey sisters, like, how's the day going? You're like, okay, they're probably a member of the church. So that was pretty, I guess, easier to tell than I thought it was going to be. There's also sometimes in the summer, more than the winter, where you'd be assigned a group tour. So there'd be a bus that would come in with like 50 people on it. And so you and your companion, and usually another companionship, would do like a scheduled tour, you could say. And so they'd come in at like 3 o'clock and you'd be there waiting for them. And then you would plan like, okay, we're going to go to the tabernacle first, and then the assembly hall, and then the South Visitor Center. And we'd take them through that way. And I'm trying to think. So that was more in the summertime. A lot of the time those buses are Mandarin speaking buses. And so they'd have the Chinese sisters do it. And then like if I didn't have a Chinese speaking companion, my companion, I would like just help out the tour a little bit, kind of make sure everybody stayed together and kind of go in the back and just like make sure it's all going okay. And then at some point in the tour, one of the Mandarin sisters would ask us to bear a testimony that she'd translate for us, just so that we got to kind of be involved a little bit. And so we would go, other than that, we'd just go around and talk to various people. And I think one of the best things about Temple Square is that you can stay in contact with everyone that you talk to. There's the referral cards, and so if someone's a member of the church and they want to invite their friends to learn more, then they can that way. And so you'd invite them to think of someone that they know that you can share the gospel with. Or if they're not a member of the church, you can invite them to learn more, whether through you calling them, through you emailing them, through getting missionaries sent to their house, through you sending them a Book of Mormon. Like there's so many ways you can stay in contact with these people, just depending on what level they're at. And so the other half of your day, I guess in the winter it's half your day. In the summer it's less than half of your day you spend in the teaching center, where you're on the computer and on the phones and you're calling people, and people are calling you and asking you questions about the church, and you spend time teaching the gospel through that. So if you have an investigator that you're continually calling with your companion who isn't ready to meet with the missionaries yet, then you're planning lessons for them and you're teaching them preach my gospel lessons. Like there's nothing different about talking to someone over the phone. Your companion, you're connected together. If they are meeting with the missionaries, then you get to call them and just kind of reiterate what the missionaries are talking about. So say, you're teaching someone for a while and then they say, okay, we're ready to meet with the missionaries. And so then you call them in like a couple of weeks. You say, how's it going with the missionaries? Like, what did they teach you? And they say, oh, well, they have a connection with you. So they could say like, oh, we had a concern about this, but we didn't feel okay telling the missionaries. And you could say, oh, well, we can clear that up for you. Or, whatever it is. Or they say, we're loving it. We've changed in this way and this way. And you just kind of keep encouraging them. to do that. And so also, if you can't get a hold of people, I mean, we taught people in Africa that we couldn't understand over the phone because the connection was so bad, so we'd email people and they'd email us back. Like, there's no mission boundaries on Temple Square, so anywhere in the world we could teach people. Yeah, so my first companion, like I mentioned, so she had been in the country, I guess, speaking English for 8 months, and so we could communicate fairly well. And then because she didn't have language study, that's right, that's what I was talking about. She didn't have language study, and so we would be able to just, walk around the square and communicate, just talk about English words or Korean words, and she would teach me, how to say hello in Korean, and I would kind of help her to know, like, how to, I think the main thing she had difficulty with just, like, grammar, like, knowing when to put in what words into sentences, but she was amazing. She was really, really great with just being patient with herself. I think she was a really good example to me of what it meant to not only be patient with others, but because obviously she needed to be patient with me because I was like trying to learn everything and asking her like 1,000 questions, but being patient with herself and being, not too worried about her English. I know if I was trying to speak another language somewhere, I know that's something that would really worry me. But we had a good time together as a companionship. She would cook lots of interesting food because we didn't go to members' houses for dinner. We would just cook all our own food. And so she would make, we'd go to the Asian market on P-Day and she'd make some bulgogi and some kimchi and, the classic Korean food that's just so good. And so we never had a lot of time to cook. Usually most of the cooking that we did was we'd get home from the square around 9:15 and then we'd have to be in bed by 10:30. And so we'd usually make like lunch and dinner for the next day during the nighttime. So we'd, I don't know, a lot of things in the crock pot and lots of food like that. Sometimes we could come home for lunch in the winter time, not during Christmas, but at some points of the year we could go home for lunch because the apartments aren't too far from Temple Square. So if that was the case, then we just only have to bring dinner with us. And we would there's a little kitchen area like to heat up your food in the mission home, which is in the basement of the South Visitor Center. And so we just, have food there, and there's like microwaves and fridges that are always full of food. And so that was my Korean companion, I guess, in relation to what we ate like and things like that. But my other companions, most of my other companions were surprisingly from the States. That's kind of rare for Temple Square. I think usually you'd have more international companions. But my last transfer, I had a companion from Switzerland, and that was fun because she spoke Italian, Swiss German, English, and French. And so we would constantly be on language tours because when someone comes to the square who speaks, like, for instance, French, they can request to have a tour in French. And so we would just get a call on the cell phone and say, like, oh, you need to come do this tour. And so I got to meet a lot of people from Germany, which was cool when I was her companion. And so that was fun. That was a really busy transfer. We didn't really cook a whole lot because we were trying to organize different people in our zone to go to different assignments, because we had to organize people to be in the Beehive House and organize people to be in the Humanitarian Center and Welfare Square. So we were just like running around a lot, but she's an awesome companion. She worked really, really hard. And I was always impressed by her ability to speak so many languages. But yeah, there was definitely, time to eat. I was never starving or anything like that. But because we didn't have a ward that we went to, our ward was all sister missionaries. So I can't even remember the time. It was either 7 or 7:30 in the morning on Sundays. We would go to the Joseph Smith building and we'd have sacrament meeting with all the sister missionaries. And the sister missionaries that were leaving that transfer would usually be assigned to talk. And there'd always be like beautiful musical numbers. And it was just like this lovely spiritual morning. It was just like so nice, just like sit there and be spiritually fed. And then after sacrament meeting, we'd go to the square. So there wasn't really Society or Sunday school. Well, I was there, and during I think it was like the last 2 months of my mission, they started doing Relief Society on Thursdays. So they would I'm trying to figure out how that worked actually. Oh yeah, it was Thursday morning during companionship study time. So around like 8 o'clock in the morning, we would go to the square before the square opened and we'd have a Relief Society on Thursdays. That was kind of cool. But yeah, we even had like one of the sisters, her assignment was to be Relief Society president, and there's lots of different assignments on Temple Square. There's all the sisters, they're have, you know, something like a relief study president or district leader or zone leaders. The assistants to president are obviously sisters. And so we got to I guess have a lot of different types of experiences on Temple Square.